Podcast 253, The Interplay of Darkness and Light in Psalm 139 verse 12, a literature review and textual analysis, copyright 2026, ISBN 9798 90271 4200. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I am Dr. William Anderson Giddens, DD, your host from beautiful Barbados, and I am absolutely thrilled to delve into today's topic, which I believe is not only profound but deeply transformative. The interplay of darkness and light in Psalm 139:12. The title alone may spark a few questions in your mind. What is the overarching idea behind this? How does darkness and light intersect in such a powerful passage? Well, let's unpack that, shall we? At the outset, I'll admit this topic might feel a bit heavy, but I promise you it's incredibly rewarding. Through an interdisciplinary lens, drawing on my experience as a photojournalist, author, cultural theorist, media arts specialist, and of course, a doctor of divinity. This subject holds immense depth, one that invites reflection and connection with each of you listening. Now, let's dive into Psalm 139, specifically verse 12, which reads, I quote, "Even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." End quote. New International Version. At first glance, this might seem like a simple metaphor, but there is so much more going on here, especially when we explore the theological, cultural, and visual implications of the text. The verse presents a profound paradox that challenges traditional views of darkness and light, both in Scripture and in our daily lives. Setting the stage, darkness and light. Now, traditionally in the Bible, darkness has often been associated with negative concepts like sin, suffering, ignorance, or even death. Light, on the other hand, is seen as a symbol of God's presence, truth, and salvation. You think of it as the eternal duality of good versus evil. However, Psalm 139:12 completely flips that notion on its head, revealing a completely new dimension of how we should view darkness and light in the context of God's omnipresence and omniscience. As a doctor of divinity, I focus on the theological richness of this passage. The verse speaks to God's all-encompassing nature. There's no space where God's presence cannot penetrate. The darkness in this verse is not a source of fear or sin. Instead, it becomes an integral part of God's divine nature. In other words, no matter how dark our lives may seem, there's always an omnipresent light. God's divine light shining through, illuminating even the darkest of situations. The interdisciplinary lens, theology, culture, and media. Now, I know what you're thinking. I think that's great, but you may query in your mind, how do you approach this from such different perspectives? What does being a photojournalist and cultural theorist have to do with Psalm 139? And that's a valid question. I tell you this, it's all about the lenses through which we interpret the world. As a photojournalist, I am always looking for the subtle play of light and shadow in images. Light often shines through darkness, revealing something beautiful or poignant. Think about those iconic moments in photography where light emerges from the darkness, symbolizing hope or a breakthrough. My work in this area informs how I see the darkness and light in Psalm 139:12, not just as theological concepts, but as visual metaphors for moments of divine revelation and transformation. As a cultural theorist, I also ask, how do different cultures understand the interplay of light and darkness? In some cultures, darkness is associated with the unknown, but also with mystery and potential. In others, it's feared as a symbol of evil or separation from the divine. By examining these different views, I can bring a broader, more inclusive understanding of what it means when Psalm 139 declares that darkness is as light to you. God transcends these boundaries, illuminating everything regardless of how humanity perceives it. And lastly, as a doctor of divinity, I use rigorous theological reflection to understand the divine implications of these symbols. Psalm 139 verse 12 emphasizes that God's understanding and presence are not bound by human definitions of light and dark. God sees through all layers of human existence, no matter how murky or opaque they might seem to us. The ultimate message, a word of assurance. So, you might be asking, what's the ultimate message here? Well, in simple terms, we're never truly in the dark when we walk with God. Even in moments of despair or confusion, there is an enduring light that shines through the darkness, one that offers hope, clarity, and assurance. This is what the passage ultimately reveals. No matter how deep the shadows may be in our lives, we are always seen by God. The light of God's presence is not just for the good times, but it's especially powerful during the darkest moments of our journey. Whether you're facing personal challenges, spiritual questions, or moments of suffering, the truth remains. I quote, "Darkness is as light," end quote, to God. This theme, which has been explored through multiple lenses, photographic, cultural, and theological, reminds us that God's light shines on, even in the most unexpected places. In conclusion, as we wrap up today's episode, I invite you to reflect on the significance of Psalm 139:12 in your own life. What areas of darkness are you facing, and how might you begin to see them as illuminated by God's divine light? This conversation is just the beginning of a much deeper exploration into the interplay of light and darkness, not just in Scripture, but in our own stories. I hope you found today's discussion meaningful, as it's been a joy for me to share these reflections with you. This podcast was captured and framed in ePublication 422. And you can explore more on this topic through my book, The Epistemology of Darkness, Analyzing Even the Night Shall Be Light About Me. Copyright 2026, ISBN 979-890-271-4200. God bless.